Hey everybody, in today's video I'm going to be reacting to the Marc Murphy episode on Dyl and Friends. Now, if you have not watched the interview between Dyl Buckley and Marc Murphy on Dyl's podcast, it's available as an audio. It's also available on Dyl's YouTube channel. You just type in Producy and it's there, Dyl and Friends, as the playlist. It's just a must. It's a must. For me, someone who grew up, really early teenage years, Murphy was that first, hero that I latched onto in the new era with the number one draft picks. I learned quite a bit. I was affirmed on quite a few things that I already felt, but I did learn quite a bit that I didn't know, and that's the reason for this video. I wanted to react to it and get your thoughts as well, because obviously Murphy's just retired at the end of 2021. We're about to enter 2022, so a lot of what he said has a lot of relevance to the current group and a little bit more before this group. So for me, obviously, I'm talking about that 2005 to really that 2013 era. Obviously, when we lose Rats, we get Mick, get Bolts. So I'm going to run through a few things that I learned. Now, the first thing was about the great group that I thought we had, and that was really the build from 2008 when Juddy arrived, pretty much up until it all kind of fell apart in 2012. So Murph spoke about that 2011 year, how it all clicked, and then that 2012 year, and we've spoken about it on the channel a lot. I did a video recently about my top 5 moments, and round 3 2012 was as good as it got for me, and really as high as I've felt about the team or about the club ever in my life. And so to hear him talk a bit about how important those injuries to Carazzo and Laidler and to himself were, just really affirmed what I had felt. And just to hear him talk about the confidence that he had in the group. We the way they spoke about how had we beaten West Coast, we were missing Gibbs and Cruiser, who were 2 of our top 6 players at the time. Geelong we had a pretty good matchup against because we were quick, and so we had that confidence. And then obviously you never know what happens in a granny. Not to say that we would have definitely beaten Geelong, but it just goes to show how confident they were on the inside about the group that they had. And I think the theme that comes up obviously with 2012, we had a bit of a quick reaction. We tried to be old Carlton, some may say, but getting Mick into the club was really something that has been debated all the way through, and it still happens. 10 years on, it still gets spoken about. Should we have just backed in Rats, put the support around him, and gone again? And would we have had our Dimmer Hardwick or our Bomber Thompson type story? And that's up for debate. I think, and I want to make this very clear, something I learned, and that was about the Mick Malthouse relationship. So for me, I've really had the tune of blaming the club. It was the club's fault for reacting the way they did, and it was the club's fault for appointing Mick Malthouse, and the club are in the wrong. The administrators and the decision makers, it's their fault. And I can see maybe I have failed to make it very clear what I thought about Mick Malthouse, because I sort of didn't want to put the blame on Mick, and I wanted to take more accountability for us and what we did wrong, as opposed to just blaming Mick for ruining the club. However, make this very clear: fuck Mick Malthouse, fuck that motherfucker. Listen, fair play to him, selfish, wanted to do his own thing, his own legacy, and get the record. And the fact that we got sucked into that. A lot of what this interview has done for me is really just probably opened up some wounds again. However, we're opening up the wounds to clear it out, get some closure, and close them back up again so we can truly move on. But I think now, having heard Murph speak about that group, and when you think about it, we had 3 number 1 draft picks in a row and the best player in the league at the time, Chris Judd, and that group only made a semi-final in terms of how high they were able to reach. And when you look back on that, you can blame the club, you can blame Mick, everyone involved. Everyone involved is at fault in some way or another, and it's a shame. It's a shame that we, I guess at the time we were looking at whatever we were looking at. I guess, running a sporting club is difficult, running a footy club is difficult, running the Carlton Football Club must be very difficult. But the reality is, when you get 3 number 1 draft picks and Chris Judd, and all you have to show for it at the end of the day is a semi-final and an elimination final win, it's unfulfilled potential. And I hope that there are lessons to bring from that into the current group about taking your opportunities. And we were very talented back then as well. We had the best talent in the country, but it doesn't mean anything unless you build the surroundings and the environment of a successful culture. So learn a bit about that. Mix it's just a dark chapter in our history, another one that gets added. I learned a lot about Murph's leadership through watching this, and he was always someone who, from the outside looking in, wasn't someone that seemed to be very rah-rah and screaming and shouting and demonstrative on the field. And then when you hear Dyl talking about Murph pulling him aside and having those one-on-one conversations, looking him in the eye and telling him you've got to work harder, or whatever the feedback was, I had a better appreciation for it. And I kind of almost see some similarities between the way Murph led and what Cripps tries to do. I think there's this outside perception that your captain needs to be this screaming and shouting and demonstrative figure. I don't know where it comes from, but I have a newfound respect for the way Murph went about it, not just as a leader, but also just as an athlete, as a human. I spent the last probably 4 years of his career almost defending him, which I found really fascinating. There was obviously starting this channel, this was all, 3.5-ish years ago where this channel all started. And I spent a lot of time reading, listening, absorbing, and I still do. And the sentiment coming out, there seemed to be like a subsection pretty much since Mick left. And Murph speaks a little bit about when Mick left and, how Murph was made the scapegoat in some sense. Never complained about it, just went on with his business and copped it. And I feel like that seeped into the fan base in a really poor way. And, I'm not here to say everyone should be fessing up, put your hand up, I told you so, because I've had it wrong on, numerous occasions, and I'll probably continue to get it wrong on other occasions as well. But I think it's a really good reminder that and I say it all the time, we don't know what's going on the inside. We don't know. We put the pieces together based on what we see during a game and in press conferences and in little short, media clips that the club put out or the AFL put out. That's really how we form our opinion on what we think's going on. Anything you read on, forums, big footy, anonymous accounts, it's bullshit. It's fabricated. It's biased. There's always a little bit of something added in there. It's Chinese whispers. It's never the full truth. So it's just another layer of a reminder for me to talk about what we know as fact as close as what we can. Now, I think there's a couple of ways to help that in the future. Now, obviously, Murph's someone, by watching this interview, he never wanted to talk about what was going on with his injury, his knee issue, the staph infection, the amount of surgeries he had. No one seemed to know about it. And so I think there's an opportunity here. Maybe it's a cultural thing where we don't want to talk about what's going on with us. I remember the Patrick Cripps situation comes to mind. Like, he was getting injections in his back up until round 2, 2021. I think in the future, maybe we need to look at as an industry as a whole, whether it's sport, whether it's administrators, players, fans, media, to just report the facts. If Patrick Cripps is getting injections in his back, let the fans, let the members know. Let's try and... I don't know what the balance is between how much information should be revealed for the sake of having the context behind what we criticize or what we talk about, in the media. So it just got me thinking about that. I think there will be, if I've got the read right, and I've seen a few people already putting their hand up, there'll be quite a few more that hopefully will look back and think about some of the things that they've said about Murph as a human being, publicly on Facebook or on the public forums, about what they've said about him without even knowing the real truth. And at the end of the day, it's funny because you speak to anyone, or when you hear, listen to an interview with anyone at the club, whether it's be player or whatever, they all speak so highly of him. And the fact that there seems to be a fan out there or fans out there that know better than those who are on the inside, it just bemuses me. So it is a reminder of just, I always try and, even when I get emotional, remind myself, you don't know what's going on. You don't know the full context of what's going on. And that's something that I'm always going to try and carry through for the rest of this channel's existence. It's always going to be about that. The angle is trying to react to what I see in fact, but also remembering that we don't know the full story for the most part. So I learned about that, and I think the injuries as well, and the inability for him to do normal things now, and what he's actually sacrificed, for the club. I think, when he talks about he's not able to lift his own son above his head, like he can't lift his hands above his head because his shoulders just won't let him at the moment. And I think it was another reminder to me of what the players actually put themselves through in order to play the game. Obviously, they love it, they earn a living from it, but also they entertain the fans and they represent the fans. So I think that's another layer of something I learned, and that I'll be reminded about as I move forward in this world here. But also, it's very interesting to see, because he had it seemed to be some outside noise coming in about him, criticism, and the way that he carried himself. And when he spoke about the bit that really hit me, there were two bits. One part was when he was talking about there were times when he hated the club. That broke me to hear him say that. He hated the club, he hated what was going on, but he knew that, at the start of each day, he had to, pull himself together. And, at the end of the day, he was the captain. He was the leader, and his energy was infectious and people would pick up on it. So I'm mindful a little bit about, his mental health and how that was going, and suppressing things, because that's what a lot of us do in society. These days, we suppress our emotions. So to hear him talk about that was quite confronting, but also another layer of love of what his focus was on. Like, even though things were shit and he was, essentially, let's be honest, he was playing at a club that was a complete fucking shit show. This club never ceases to amaze me with how many fucking poor decisions it makes, in the past, that just keep rearing their head out. But the fact that he was in that environment, he knew it was shit, but he wanted to be a part of, the surge up, was really important. And then when he speaks about what kind of a leader would I have been if I had just pulled the pin and got out and went to Richmond as they were chasing him, or whoever else, one of the expansion clubs as well that he mentioned. And it begs the question, like, in the long run, that's going to help potentially the mind of someone like a Patrick Cripps, who obviously re-signed with us, but a Sam Walsh as well coming up the ranks. We want to, he's almost sacrificed his own career, Murph, in order to pass the message down to the next generation that you've got to stick fat and don't leave the club. And the way he spoke about, he could have left, his head was telling him to go, but he couldn't find it in his heart to actually leave the club. Combination of all of those things is the reason why he was my favorite player, and probably just strengthened his legacy and taught me a lot about how to handle oneself and how to stay focused on what's important and not get too caught up in the outside noise. Because it happens in every walk of life. Criticism comes, haters come and go, jealousy, all of that stuff. It happens. But what you're focusing on and how you react to a situation is more important, I believe, than the situation itself. So learn a lot. Huge thank you to Dyl and Murph for doing it. I think more content like that needs to come out. I think the more that we see, the more honesty that we see, hopefully the brains in society take over those who don't have the fucking brains and just talk without thinking. And hopefully we can get a little bit more understanding, get a little bit more context of what's going on, and then just be better as people, as fans, and as we react. So we're on this journey. It's an interesting one. We have a lot to see now. There's so much more content. There's so much more discussion around, especially our club. So that's what I learned. That's what I thought about the interview. Really interested to hear from you and what you thought about it and how you saw the interview. Were there things in there that you didn't know and that shocked you? Were there things in there that just affirmed what you already suspected? Let me know in the comments. I think it's going to be a really interesting discussion, and we'll go from there.